My name is Carina Gardner, and I'm what you would call a practical designer. If you're ready to create a life that you love, become an incredible force for good, and generate income while pursuing your dreams, this is the podcast for you. Welcome to Make and Design.
Hi, designers. Today I want to talk about sleep. In particular, I'd like to talk about Matthew Walker's book, Why We Sleep. I read this probably 4 or 5 years ago. And I've had some surprising things happen the last little bit that made me think about talking about this with you. As many of you know, we have, well, maybe not all of you know, we have several big projects going on that we can't talk about at this time, but hopefully in the fall or early next spring, we're going to be able to release more information on. And whenever I have a new project, I find that I'm excited, that I'm trying to kind of figure out all the logistics. And sometimes this means more sleep. Sometimes this means less sleep. And something interesting happened to me actually yesterday. I meant to record this yesterday, but I just couldn't get to it because I had so many things. I went to bed actually a little bit later than I normally would. I was spending a lot of time with my kids, and I ended up going to bed a little bit later than I normally would. And I really had zoned out, I would say, for at least 50% of the day. I had been working on a lot of design stuff, which, by the way, you guys, this is why I love design so much. I had spent the last 2 days before this designing a lot, like just in sheer and total like white noise, zone out design. For me, design isn't a lot of brain power. It's a lot of just like digging into the programs and drawing. And that's what I had been doing for 2 days straight. And then I had spent like half a day just hanging out with my kids and playing with them and reading a book. And so I went to bed a little bit later, but I have to preface this by saying like I had not been thinking about what I was doing with all this new stuff at all. I had been designing, and I had kind of given myself a space to kind of take a break. I woke up at 4:30 in the morning, so I had slept basically 4.5 hours and could not go back to sleep. And my brain was racing and developing all this new information that I had not been thinking about, not even a tiny bit. In fact, like what I had planned was really set in stone. And I can't tell you specifics, sorry guys, but just know like it was like something brand new. Like I had not been thinking about it. I had not considered it. It was not something I was even close to being on my mind. And I woke up because I couldn't go back to sleep. I ended up getting up, showering, trying to process in my brain everything that I had thought, wrote a long list of all the outcomes that had come from it, and then sat down and got to work. And I was kind of thrown off because this is not the way I had planned on spending that morning. Like it just really wasn't. But instead ended up digging in for about 2-3 hours to work out what my brain was trying to figure out for me. And I'm wondering if you have ever had this happen before, that your brain is trying to solve something for you that maybe you didn't even know that you needed to solve. And this takes me back to Matthew Walker's book, which if you've not read it before, is very, very fascinating. I'm going to hop in and just say, like, as you kind of get through the first little bit of the book, like some of it is, pretty academic and technical. But if you jump over to like chapter 8, he talks about the mind. The chapter name is called The Mind After Midnight, the cognitive and emotional advantages of a full night's sleep. Now, granted, I am telling you, I didn't get a full night's sleep. In fact, I got not enough sleep that night. But my brain was clearly trying to work something out. So he talks about the advantages of a full night's sleep on the brain and the heart. He talks about how it enhances creativity, problem solving, and emotional control. He also talks about the value of sleep in preserving healthy brain aging. Now, here's the thing I will say about me. I am stalwart when I talk about sleep, because I try to sleep 8 8.5 hours a night. And so I get, I think, a really healthy amount of sleep generally. So this is a weird off night. But one of the things that he talks about is, he talks a little bit later in like chapter 10 about the science of dreams, like how it's a mystery, how people can use the dreams and they'll process their feelings, emotions, they'll even process trauma, which I can attest to. And then he talks about meditation, working out, and all these different things in relation to sleep. And one of the things that I really got from it, I remember reading this, when I did, was that if we are needing to process something, that trying to solve a problem before you go to sleep isn't necessarily something you have to do, that you can actually go to sleep and wake up with several solutions. And that's a little bit what happened to me yesterday. And I just found it very fascinating because I haven't really had that. I would probably maybe on one hand say that something like that's happened before, where I've woken up extremely early with something in my head that was not something I was thinking about. Now, there are plenty of times where I will be thinking about something or processing something in my business or my design work, especially you guys' logo work in particular, because I'm always trying to figure out like what's the best thing in it. My brain's trying to like rapid fire go through all the files to figure out what kind of logo is going to work best, the branding, maybe the thought process behind what's being created. And my brain's trying to filter and fix it. And I will usually very often, especially when I am just in design only mode, I will design partially, like halfway through before I go to bed, something. And then I will go to bed. I will wake up the next morning. And when I open up that logo or the branding materials or that flyer, suddenly it's very clear what needs to happen to make that design work. So I guess all of this to say, I want to encourage you to use sleep in a way that's actually strategic. I've seen this for businesses, or entrepreneurs in particular, where they will do something like I do my morning routine, but they do it before they go to bed at night, where they kind of ask themselves questions, or they work in gratitude, or they write down things that they are trying to or wanting to do. And they do that before bed, and then they go to bed, and supposedly whatever the last thing you were thinking about, your brain is also trying to process. But I also think the brain is trying to process just like all these things going on in your life, right? So I don't think it's just the stuff right before bed, but I do think it helps. And then you do that, you sleep, you wake up, and maybe you don't have solutions, but it's so crazy the amount of times I end up having solutions. And yesterday was one of them, and I thought I would share that with you. If you've ever had an experience like this before, I would love to hear about it. Now, I know on the podcast we don't necessarily have comments, but if you write a review and you want to tell about your sleep experience, I'd love to hear it there. The other great place for this is Instagram. So if you want to go to my Instagram at Carina Gardner, and on my latest post, if you want to just post about the podcast and say, hey, I had this really crazy, amazing sleep experience, I would actually love to hear it. I myself, especially as I get older, as I get a little more set in especially my sleeping ways, I just find it very fascinating the way my own brain works, let alone everybody else's brain works. What I worry about, what I'm thinking about, what is exciting and new, and how my brain is trying to almost categorize things into positive and negative experiences. And I think that's really interesting because I think in a lot of ways, like you, I really value especially positive experiences, but I'm finding, especially maybe it's because I'm having more of them, that I'm also valuing and processing a lot more negative experiences. And one of the things I always tell designers is that life is 50-50. You've heard me say it probably here before. Life is 50-50. It's 50% good, 50% negative. And truthfully, if I'm being honest, I know in my life, have there been struggles and hard things? Yes, absolutely. Are there things I don't want to do? Yeah, all the time. But I will say it feels like I have a lot more happiness and happy hours than 50%. It feels like a lot more, and that there's actually just a really small amount of pain and negativity. The ironic thing, and you might feel this as well, is those negative things really get me down. They really consume me. They are difficult to deal with. And I'm still trying to process and figure out how to deal with those things so that I can be a better leader, a better parent, a better educator, and all the things that will help me become better in my life. But what I do find is that negative experiences, or, sometimes people will call them trials or difficulties, but I find that they actually add a little fuel to whatever I'm doing, because it's a reminder that what I'm doing is actually difficult. And if I need to spend a whole weekend designing a brand new fabric line, or if I need to spend my weekdays building YouTube videos to explain about design work or foundational materials, then I'm going to have a little fire behind me and not going to let it get me down. Instead, I'm going to be like, okay, this is clearly important. This is important work. And so I just thought it was interesting what happened yesterday, because I can't remember the last time that happened. And especially since the last 3 years of starting Design Suite, which has been really such an interesting thing all on its own. I went from being, you guys know this, when you're your own designer doing your own things all by yourself, from that to being with people all the time, designing with people, educating and helping other people try to get to where I myself have been. And it's just been an interesting transition from kind of being my own entity, like just doing my thing, designing, making money as a designer, building my businesses, getting onto new platforms, and kind of making that switch over from that to, having a team and working with designers and watching people succeed. Also watching people not put in effort. That's been a really interesting thing. And the kind of responsibility that I feel around that, and trying to figure out how to either help those people, but also remember that I can't be responsible for people's actions if they don't do what they need to do to become a good designer. So it's just an interesting process, and you can hear me almost processing it out loud here with you today. This is kind of an episode that usually I would do on our Design Your Life podcast, which is our in-house podcast. You can find out more about that at DesignSuiteCourses.com/design events. If you want to see, that podcast, it's a paid podcast, where I kind of will process a lot of things and talk about what I hear and see and what I'm doing. So just very, very interesting. So, okay, all of that to say, I think that there are some strategies you can use with your sleep. First of all, more of it, right? 8 hours, 8.5 hours. I know I hear people say 7 hours is enough, but I think most of us need more than we realize. So try to prioritize some sleep. The second thing is, if you can let yourself sleep or take naps when you're trying to process something difficult, that's not a terrible thing. So maybe leave some questions or think about some things before you go to bed, and then see if you can get any answers the next day, or if it kind of brews in your mind overnight. Very interesting, right? All right, I didn't talk about dreaming at all, because dreaming is its own special thing. And even Matthew Walker in his book is like, we have no idea what dreams really mean or what they, signify. I love, is it Inside Out, the Disney movie? If you watch that, and there's all sorts of crazy things that happen in the dream, where she makes up dreams in her head. It's very fascinating. But I don't know anything about that. I just want to say that I've seen it in my own life. More sleep helps. And if I need to process something, giving myself some of that space to sleep and sleep on it. I think there's a reason that saying came out is meant to be helpful for us.
Did you know you have access to more free design content, die cut files, and sewing patterns? Join our exclusive VIP group for free by going to designsweetcourses.com/free.